Hey beautiful people, what is up and welcome back to my channel and welcome to today's video, which is going to be a first impressions of the Adept Cosmetics inspired palette. If this is your first time watching me, hi, welcome, I'm Jamila and I love all things beauty. I love all things makeup and skincare, and I especially love sharing my tips and tricks for how to find high-end and luxury beauty products at bargain prices. If that sounds like something you're interested in, I would absolutely love if you would consider subscribing and joining the fam. Okay, so how my first impressions videos typically go is I like to break it up into 3 parts. So I will be doing the details of the products, like, you know, the price, the ingredient, well, not the ingredients, but, you know, is it vegan, all of that. Then I go into some swatches. I will be doing a little bit of swatch comparisons because one of you guys requested that I compare some of the multi-chromes in here to the ones in the Trove palette from Blend Bunny Cosmetics. And then I'm just going to do one quick look. Because my eyes cannot handle multiple looks in one day, so you're all just gonna get one look, and then I'll come back and give you guys my first impressions thoughts. If you are curious about like how I feel about it more cohesively, I do a ranking the last 8 to 10 eyeshadow palettes that I've tried video, and that will give you a better sense once I've used it a couple more times. So without further ado, because we try and keep this short and sweet, let's dive into the video. So I'm hoping to have this filmed, edited, and uploaded as soon as possible because this inspired palette will be restocked on February 20th, which is tomorrow, for one final time. That being said, this is a very limited edition palette, so once it's gone, I think it's going to be gone. And I'm saying I think because I do think that limited edition is a bit of a joke when it comes to beauty products because so many limited edition things have come back, but that's neither here nor there. So this is the Adept Cosmetics inspired palette. This is a part of what I think they've been doing around sort of the DC universe. So they first did the House of Elle palette, which is inspired by Superman and, you know, the Elle family. And the inspired palette is based off of Green Arrow, which is another one of the heroes in that sort of DC universe. So on the website, it does say that this palette is very limited edition to keep it in a cool, dry place. It has 6 Mirakuru multichromes, 1 duochrome, shimmery, glittery-esque topper, 2 duochrome shimmers, 1 Mirakuru shimmer, and 5 matte pigments. And they are specifically calling them pigments because technically they're not safe for eye use in the USA, but you all know how that goes. So this is also 100% free of glitter and mineral oil and is vegan. It is a magnetic palette, so you can actually remove this and shift things around if you have other palettes from the brand. And it says that it contains 30% recycled plastic. And lastly, this palette is $68 USD, and that's before tax and everything. I do have a code with the brand. It's just Jamila. That will save you 10%. It is affiliate, so I do get a kickback if you shop through my code, which I appreciate because it helps me put back into the channel. But I just wanted to give you guys all of those details. So the palette does come like this in the sort of standard Adept Cosmetics leather, faux leather packaging. It does have this plastic wrap on it. I kept it on here for this part of the video because with all Adept Cosmetics palettes, there are no details on the product itself because it's just this sort of faux leather thing. So the plastic that covers it when you get it has all of the details. And it does say that this was made in China, has a 24-month shelf life, and is vegan and cruelty-free on the back here. So now I'm going to... Isn't that stunning? And I think that this is my favorite packaging that they've done so far. This little symbol thing, oh my god, it's gorgeous. Anyways, let me show y'all what y'all came to see. So here we have the palette. This is the beautiful color story. You've probably seen this all before. For context, I film in natural light, so literally I'm sitting in front of a window. This is exactly how it looks in real life. I have done no sort of adjusting or editing or any studio lights or anything like that. So you do get 15 shades. You have these 2 rows of shimmers and then 1 row of mattes. And you can't really see it, but it does include a big mirror. And on the mirror, it says, "You have failed the city." This is actually one of the lines from the Arrow series that the main character says a lot. So it's kind of cute. It's cool. So I don't want to touch it because it's so pretty, but let's dive into some swatches. Now, the website does not say which specific shades are the multi-chromes or the duochromes or the topper, so I'm just gonna give my best guess and go in. Just taking off my watch really quickly so that I have as much arm space as possible. And I do want to flag, because I know that I have received PR from Adept Cosmetics in the past. I did not get this in PR. I purchased this on my own. So just wanted to flag that in case y'all were wondering. Okay, so I have my clean bare. I'm going to try to go row by row and swatch this baby. So here we have the first 3 shades. You can see how wet and reflective these are. They are definitely smoother than the shades in the Minka palette, which I think is great because I don't think a lot of people really enjoyed the thick, chunky nature of those Minka shades. So, oh my god, that's stunning. So first up we have Frank Bertinelli. Then we have Danielle Brickwell. Jason Bruder. I'm probably pronouncing that very wrong. Oh, that's pretty. Here we have the next 3 shades. Again, really stunning, sort of wet, reflective shades. Oh my god, this green, beautiful. So this first one we have Leo Mueller. Or Muller. Adam Hunt. Nelson Ravitch. Here we have the next 3 shades. Harold Buckman. Isabel Rokev, I think. Warren Patel. And you can see from these multichromes, they are really sort of just wet and reflective. Oh, I said these wrong. This is Manticora, Harold Buckman, Isabel Rokev. Okay, here we have the next 4 shades. This is the final shimmer shade, and I think this is the one that is the toppery type of shade. It's definitely more chunky, has a little bit more texture and a little bit more grit to it. And this is Warren Patel. I'm actually gonna go ahead and swatch that up top here. That's pretty. Yeah, this definitely has a little bit more grit to it, so you have to spread it out to get it to be a little bit smoother. And it's definitely, it doesn't have a lot of base to it, so I see what they mean by toppery. So now we're gonna get into the mattes. First we have Edward Rasmus. Ooh. Hannibal Bates. Martin Summers. So they didn't swatch very well, but, you know, with mattes, I don't really see a lot of value in swatching mattes too much because it doesn't really tell you how it's going to perform. I will say that when I touched them, they felt very dry, which is not necessarily a bad thing. So I think just keep in mind, swatches, especially for mattes, doesn't give you much of anything. And these are the final 2 shades. We have Cyrus Vance. Ooh, that's a pretty yellow. And James Holder. It's a very interesting mustardy, kind of pukey color. I think that this will look really cool in different complexions. It just kind of depends on your skin tone. I want to swatch the green shade one last time. Martin Summers, I want to swatch this one again. There we go. Okay, so here is the Adept Cosmetics Inspired Palette. I think it's really, really beautiful. I love this sort of blue-green gorgeousness of this. I'm really excited to put this on my eyes, but like I said, I want to do some quick comparisons because a couple of you asked to see how this compared to other multichromes. Now, I definitely don't have the biggest multi-chrome collection, so this is not going to be a ton, so just keep that in mind. So I do want to compare it to my Blend Bunny Trove palette, and I have my Danessa Myricks Lightwork Volume 4 sitting right here on the table, so I might as well see what compares here as well. And I think we might be able to find a dupe for every one of these shades. Let's see. So first up, I want to go in with this shade here, which is Treasures Untold from Blend Bunny. That's what that looks like. And I want to compare it to the Leo Mulla shade from the Adept palette. So this is the Adept palette, Leo Mulla shade. This is the Blend Bunny Mermaid Tears shade. So definitely not the same. I also want to compare it to the Trippy shade from Danessa Myricks. So this is the Danessa Myricks Trippy shade. I'm gonna put that right here. So definitely Danessa Myricks and the Adept, they have a very similar flip, but I think that the Adept Cosmetics has a stronger shift to it than the Danessa Myricks one does. And the Mermaid Tears shade isn't comparable from Blend Bunny. Next up, I want to compare Cove from Blend Bunny, and I think that's going to be probably comparable to the Frank Bertinelli shade. So let's swatch Cove from Blend Bunny. So Adept, Blend Bunny, and I'm comparing it to Escapism from Danessa. So these three are giving the same. I don't know, it might just be me. So we have Frank Bertinelli from Adept, Cove from Blend Bunny, and Escapism from Danessa. Okay. So I think the Adept Cosmetics one is definitely the weakest of the three. This Danessa one is, whew, child. And the Blend Bunny one is really nice as well. But they have the exact same flip. Like, I'm looking at how they shift from that blue to green. The flip is the exact same. You can kind of see it on the camera. It's just how pigmented and how wet looking each shade looks. You can see how wet they look from what's left over in my fingers. Okay, next up we're gonna go in with the shade Dive Deep from Blend Bunny. I'm gonna compare that to Manticora from Adept. And lastly, Sixth Sense from Danessa. Okay, so this is the Adept shade. So we have Manticora from Adept. Blend Bunny. And then Danessa. So I think that there's definitely similarity between the Adept and the Blend Bunny. Even Danessa to like a lesser extent. It just depends on how you shift. This one is just a little bit on the lighter side. And then the last shade is Mermaid Tears. So I'm taking Jason Bordeaux from, or Broda. Sorry about the pronunciation. That's from the Adept palette. Going to compare that to Mermaid Tears from Blend Bunny. And lastly, Awakening from Danessa. Okay guys, this is the exact same shade. It has the exact same shift. This is the exact same shade. I don't think it's the exact same formula. I think that maybe one is more reflected than the other, but hey. So we have Adept, Blend Bunny, Danessa. So Danessa is definitely the most wet looking out of the three, but it's the same shift. Look at how much I still have left over. Danessa just be like, there's so much pigment still left over. Like, I can do a whole other swatch. Y'all. Okay, so now that we've done a couple of comparisons and you've seen the palette swatched out, let's quickly dive into an eye look. I'm gonna wash my hands first though. Be right back. Okay, there are so many looks that I want to do, which is always a good indication of if I'm gonna like a palette or not, but we're just gonna dive right in. So I'm gonna actually start off with the yellow shade, and I wanna put that into the inner part of the eye as my first transition shade. Okay. Now it's more of a yellow green than anything else, and because this is a really sort of light shade, I want to do more of a stamping motion than an actual blending motion with this because I want it to show up on my complexion, and I am not the type of creator or beauty user to go in with a white base. That's just not me. So in order to make this pop, I have to stamp it in more than anything else. This is trying to put down a very light / white base in order to get more pigment. But if that is something that you are comfortable doing, you can also do it that way too. But it's applying really well and the pigment is there. Okay. Next I'm gonna go into the green shade, Martin. And I'm gonna use that as the second half of my transition shade, blending that into the yellow. You trying to save me, but I got me. Yeah, I don't need no intervention. I'm also doing similar sort of stamp and blend motions, just because of how light some of these shades are. And then lastly, I'm gonna go into the deep, I guess it's a teal shade. It's Edward Rasmus. The names on these shades, y'all. I know I'm butchering all of them. I apologize. I used to watch Green Arrow back in the day. I used to watch most of the series in that DC franchise. So Green Arrow, Flash, Supergirl, all of those things. But I kind of fell off of all of them. They kind of got pretty meh in my opinion. But these names, man, I'm gonna just have to start referring to them by first name so I don't butcher the last name, because I hate that. And I don't have enough interest to actually Google and figure out the right pronunciation for every single name. You want that ascension? Did I forget to mention? I don't need no intervention. This is nice and deep though. I was worried that it might not get too deep, and once I started blending it out it would just get really light, but it has really nice depth to it. And so far these mattes are all, they're blending and applying and building really nicely, so I'm very, very happy so far. Okay, so I love where this is going. I'm just going to go back over with the green, which was the second matte shade, and blend that into the deep shade a little bit better. And lastly, and probably the hardest thing, is picking the shimmer to go on top. I really want to go in with this shimmer. It is Leo. So I think that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to put that all over the lid. I'm not going to try to overcomplicate this with multiple shimmers like I almost always do. So I'm going in with my Sonia G Builder Brush. And I'm just going to, oh, that's pretty. I love that that is appearing really, really pink. So I was worried that the shift would be more on the green side because it's surrounded by green, but I like that it's really taking on that pink. Okay, so the brush is doing what it's doing, but I'm just gonna switch to my finger for this initial piece because I want a little bit more opacity, a little bit more impact, so I'm just gonna go in with my finger. Since you're all here, why don't you tell me how it feels? Tell me how it feels to be judging like a... Okay, this is pretty. Alright, now that I've done as much as I can apply with my finger, I'm gonna go back in with the brush, clean things up, and I want to try something, but I think it will ruin it. Okay, I want to do one more thing. I'm terrified that this is going to ruin it. But I still want to try. So I'm going to go in with the topper shade, Warren. And I want to tap that over the center of the eye and see what that does. No intervention. Okay. I am not mad at that. That's actually really pretty. Okay, one last thing. Oh my god, I'm the worst. one more thing. I'm gonna go in with the green shade Frank as a little bit of a liner over the green matte that I put down. Okay, I think I like where this is at. Let me do some cleaning. Y'all know the drill. I'm gonna clean up, do a little bit more zhuzhing, and then I'll come back and give you guys my first impressions, thoughts, and show you the final look. Okay, I'm back and this is the final look, and she cute. Like, she cute. Okay, let me tell you guys what else I'm wearing on the rest of my face, and we'll go from there. So I am wearing my Urban Decay Stay Naked foundation. Like, I think that was the last use. I'm like scraping dregs out of it. For concealer, I went in with the Kosas concealer as well as a little bit of my Pat McGrath concealer. For my blush, I'm using the Jaclyn Cosmetics Rogue Romance blush. I went in with the shade Ever After. For highlight, I used the highlight from the Natasha Denona Bloom palette. Just this kind of like pinky shade here because this is a pretty pink look. And for bronzer, I used my Morphe Glamour Bronze in the shade Phenom. Had this for way too long, but it's such a good one. And yeah. Anyways, so, oh, and lips. Lastly, for lips, I did go in with my Tracy lip shade from Sydney Grace. And that's the face. Okay, let's talk about the palette. Now, before we talk about the palette, I do want to do a couple more comparisons because as I was finishing up the rest of my look, I realized that there were a couple of shades that I missed in the Danessa Myricks that I think is in the Adept palette. So the first one that I want to compare is this Harold shade. It's Harold Beckman. So it's kind of like a blue purple shade. And I want to compare that to the shade Trance from the Danessa Myricks palette. Yeah, it's very, very similar. So here we have Adept, Danessa. So it's definitely the same color shift, which is not really a strong one. It's kind of like a blue purple, but the Danessa one is definitely more wet, more metallic than the Adept one. But both very beautiful. And then lastly, I think I want to compare the Nelson shade to Out of Body from Danessa. So this is Nelson from Adept. Ooh, that's pretty. And I want to compare it to Out of Body from Danessa. Okay, so here we have Adept and Danessa. Not quite the same shade, but they do have very similar flips, as you can see. Okay, now that we've done all of the comparisons, let's talk about it. This inspired palette, I really like it. I think it's such a beautiful palette. I really appreciate the different sort of smoother multi-chromes that they included in here. If you've been following the brand recently, or if you purchased from the brand recently, you know that a lot of their products or their eyeshadows as of late have had the formula that's included in their makeup palette, which is just a thicker formula. It has shea butter in it. It's a little bit creamier, richer, a little bit more chunky, which I can see not being the best for a lot of people, especially if you have hooded lids, if you have oily lids, if you have more mature lids, because it just emphasizes texture and creases a lot more easily than these types of shades. All of the multi-chromes in here are really smooth. They are the type that just look really nice on the eyes. They do have a little bit of a wet look to them, but not as strong as some other multi-chromes that I have in my collection. That being said, this palette is $68, which I think is such a good price for a palette that has this much multi-chromes. I believe it's 6 multi-chromes, a couple dual chromes. So when you look at the amount that brands charge per multi-chrome, which can range between $17 to $25 for one, the fact that you're getting 6 multi-chromes, excuse me, plus some duochromes, plus some mattes for $68. I think that the value is here in this palette. I also want to make sure that I acknowledge that I really enjoy the mattes in this palette. Y'all know how I feel about mattes. Y'all know my history with the Adept mattes. And I can confidently say that since they've reformulated, every palette that they've released since that Amulet palette has had superb mattes. Mattes that are pigmented, mattes that blend, mattes that aren't patchy, and mattes that have caused me zero issues. So I'm really glad that this is sort of like the same trend where we're seeing these really nice mattes. Now in terms of the color story, it is a green palette. It is based on Arrow, Green Arrow. It makes sense. But even though it is very green heavy, I feel like there's so much difference in a lot of the multichromes and even the mattes that you can still get a lot of different looks. I don't think that this is too monochromatic. I don't think that this is gonna give you a one-trick pony type of thing, because I do think that you get, you know, the greens, but you also have blue purples and then this sort of pink multichrome shade. So I do think that you get a little bit of versatility in here. Are these multichromes special or different flips? No, I think that they're the standard multichromes that you get with the very standard shifts. I don't think that these are any new shifts that we're seeing here. So if you do have a huge multichrome collection already, do you necessarily need this? Maybe not. But if you wanted multichromes in a palette format like this, and multichromes that I think are just better quality than some of the old shimmer palettes I've seen out there, I think that this makes sense. I also I like the curation of the mattes that they picked with this. I think that in terms of the colors, it's the perfect colorful mattes for this palette. Now that being said, because all of the colors in here in terms of the mattes are green, you're gonna end up with a green look. That's kind of what it is. And most of the shimmers are green anyway, so you're gonna end up with a green look. I do think that if you want to shake things up a bit, you might want to reach into another palette for different colored mattes, maybe some blues, maybe some neutral shades, so you can get a little bit of variety there. That being said, this is not a neutral palette, so if you were hoping to get some more neutral looks out of this, chances are you aren't going to do that. But I think if you're looking at this, you have already come to terms with the fact that it's not going to give you a neutral wearable look. And you know, wearable is extremely subjective, so it really is up to you in terms of if you consider this wearable or not. So final thoughts. I really like this. I'm really glad that I purchased this. Like I said, I bought this with my own money. I was not gifted by the brand, and I'm really happy that I have this in my collection. I think for the value, this makes a lot of sense. If you did see my comparisons, you would have noticed that I compared it to the Blend Bunny Trove palette as well as the Danessa Myricks palette, and I think you get a greater value with the Adept palette. That's because the Blend Bunny Quad, which is 4 multichromes, is $68. And the Danessa Myricks palette, which is, you know, a lot of multichromes as well as the water activated liners and the flaky shades, this is $120, I believe. It's over $100. So when you look at the price of these two palettes, and I think that I found most of the shades in the Adept palette, value-wise, this makes more sense because you're getting a lot more for $68. Now, I do think that the multichromes from Blends and Danessa is just a little bit more wet, a little bit more reflective, a little bit punchier, but the difference in price does not make it the difference in quality that I saw doesn't make up for the difference in price in terms of like how huge the gap is. So I definitely think if you don't have these, this is an excellent value, or even if you just wanted this, this is a great value. So I'm really glad to have this in my collection. I will be using this a lot more. It will definitely be in my palettes for this week, so I'll be doing a lot more on it, and it will be featured in a ranking the last 10 or so eyeshadow palettes that I've tried very soon. Lastly, again, this is restocking for a final restock tomorrow, which is Monday, February 20th. And I'm using quotations because you never know with the limited edition palettes if they're going to come back or not. So if you don't want to risk it, I definitely say give it a try. I do have a code with Adept Cosmetics. It is Jamila. Like I said at the beginning, it's going to give you 10% off, and it is going to give me a kickback. But like I always say, don't pay full price for makeup. If you don't have to, use a code, anybody's code. Just don't pay full price for this palette. And that's it. That is all I have to say about this palette. Now I want to hear from you. Let me know down in the comments below. Did you pick this up when it originally launched? Have you been using it? Do you like it? Do you plan on picking this up in the final restock tomorrow? Let me know all that in the comments below. As always, thank you guys so very much for watching. Thank you for supporting, for being here. I appreciate you. and I will catch you in my next one. Bye!